Let's go! It's time for us to start being honest about this quarterback battle and honest about some of the other spring game MVPs and the danger surrounding that. Now, look, at the end of this video, I'm going to give you my honest thoughts about what should be done about spring football. But first, let's talk about this quarterback battle. Now, before I continue, I want to say thank you to everyone that tuned in to our spring game first half film study film review, and that was so much fun. There was positive energy, healthy debate, and there was up to 200 people in there. That's a pretty big number for us. And then next Sunday night at 7 p.m. Central, I want 500. I want 1,000 people in there. So let people know it's going to be a very fun, positive experience, but at the same time also being honest, which is what we're going to do right now regarding this quarterback battle. Simply put, it's Myles or Max. It's going to be either one of those two guys. Myles and Max separated themselves from the other two. Now, I will say Garrett Nussmeier, even though he had 3 picks to TJ's 2, I thought Nuss was the better quarterback compared to TJ. So, look, I love TJ Finley. I love him as a person. I love him as a leader. You know, he has more starters experience than the other 2 quarterbacks. He started 5 games last season. And look, I've even been called a TJ biased apologist, even though the entire time I've had him listed at the number 3 quarterback. I do personally like him. He's just not as good as the other 2. And it showed in the spring game. And if you want to see the film study and the breakdown, TJ actually shared with Emily the problems that he's had as a quarterback, Emily Dixon, and we saw some of that with this spring game, some sloppy mechanics, which then led to an interception, and you could just see the mistakes were still there. Now, that doesn't mean he is not a Division I quarterback. That doesn't mean down the road he can't be the LSU starting quarterback, but it's not looking too great for him. Now, as far as Garrett Nussmeier, I've always said this about true freshman quarterbacks. This is not, and this isn't a knock on Garrett Nussmeier. This is all true freshman quarterbacks. They should not start as true freshmen. Now, of course, there are the Trevor Lawrences of the world, but those are unicorns. And look, this showed its ugly head against the spring game where he was throwing interceptions directly to people. Now, he did have the best throw in the entire first half of the spring game, and I'll link the exact throw down below if you want to watch it. And it ended with the JONTRE KIRKLIN fumble, and what impressed me even more so was after the fumble, he went to JONTRE KIRKLIN to lift him up after the play, which shows me that this kid has a lot of moxie. And his most impressive play was when he escaped a sack where, Jacqueline Roy barely touched him. In an actual game, he would have escaped it and thrown for a first down when the pocket collapsed on him. So overall, he was better than TJ, but he's not anywhere close to where the other 2 guys are right now. And in large part, that's because of the 3 turnovers. But we saw the escapability. We saw the playmaking ability. This leads us to the Myles and Max discussion, which is going to be exhausting because what makes these 2 guys so interesting is that they're polar opposite quarterbacks. Look, one thing that he and Max both need to work on are the red zone opportunities that LSU will have this coming season. We saw in the spring game that they both missed a few potential touchdowns. So, that needs work for both of them. Obviously, a lot of you are cheering for Myles because of everything that he's been through, and a lot of you are cheering for Max because those 2 wins last season at the end of the season were gutsy as heck. So, it's hard for me to say who's the better. They both missed some throws. They both had some spectacular throws. I can't wait to break down next Sunday night Max's throw to JONTRE on a corner route that was thrown on a dime. So, it's those 2 guys and the rest of the pack. And I know it is just the spring game, but that was the case with or without the spring game based on what I've seen from these quarterbacks in the past. So we'll see what Jake Peets decides to do. I'm going to let him make that decision, obviously, because it's not so much who is a better quarterback, it's what do you want your offense to look like. Now let's get to the spring game MVPs. And I've made past references to players that had amazing spring games, but never really followed it up with anything. So we will say this with caution moving forward, because as many of you know, the spring game was as much about who didn't play as those who did play. No Elias Ricks, no Ollie Gay, no Andre Anthony, no Bug Strong, no, there was only one healthy running back. So not only was there no John Emery, not only was there no Josh Williams, not only was there no Kavontre Bradford, Corin Norman, who was a running back that, I believe Ed Orgeron said got 30 carries in a spring game. I didn't see him out there at all either. So I say this with caution over the next couple of guys we're going to mention as spring game MVPs, such as, Sony Fanua and Jared Small. They both had spectacular games. Will they even be on the two deep, though? Because there was no Bug Strong. Mike Jones is coming back. Hopefully Micah Baskerville will be all set and ready to go in the fall. And then on defensive end, no Ollie Gay, no Andre Anthony, and then Savion Jones and some other guys coming in later down the road. So those two guys really were spectacular, in particular in our first half film study from yesterday. But will they even be, a part of the discussion? We'll wait and see down the road. Now, the two big spring game MVPs, though, the guys that made the most buzz were JONTRE KIRKLIN and Dwight McGLOTHERN. Let's start with JONTRE. What makes him really interesting, and Blanche is one of our diehard viewers, he is a huge JONTRE KIRKLIN fan, because JONTRE is an LSU Tiger through and through. This guy's been a backup for many years, and look, you've seen him lead the team in, stretch chants and all those things. He is a great leader. He's a great guy to have around, and this dude put together arguably the best spring game performance you'll ever see from a wide receiver, performing with the ones and the twos, changing his jersey between drives, just doing everything well. And, outside of the fumble after the long Garrett Nussmeier completion, this dude just did not miss a beat. And he had a long touchdown over the head of Derek Davis Jr. I will say, though, that JONTRE KIRKLIN has extremely high football IQ. It's you got to add that in with them. The Kayshon Boutte fumble against Alabama in the end zone, the Deshaun Jackson thing, it would not have counted as a touchdown unless JONTRE KIRKLIN went to pick the football up as for a touchdown. And then you go to the pick play against South Carolina, the first touchdown. He was able to pick J.C. Horn, which opened up Terrace Marshall, which got TJ his first touchdown pass, which gave TJ all the confidence in the world for that for the rest of that game against South Carolina. So this guy does little things well. In fact, he had a pink play against Missouri that would have won the game if Nick Bolton, the linebacker, didn't bat the football down at the line of scrimmage. But look, this game was tailor-made for JONTRE KIRKLIN, okay? The defenses weren't allowed to blitz, so they were able to sit deep in pockets of the zone, and JONTRE did a really good job of just getting open. Sometimes as a wide receiver, it's not about how great of a route you run, it's can you go to the spot where you're going to be wide open for the quarterback to throw the football? And that's what JONTRE did a lot of in this spring game. So this was a game where his high football IQ was on full display. Now, most defenses will not just sit back like that. Of course, there's going to be all the different types of blitzes. All those things helped JONTRE KIRKLIN have the performance that he had. Now, is he the best slot receiver for this team? Maybe. So last season, the slot receiver at the end of the season with Max Johnson was Coy Moore. JONTRE, when he was given the opportunity against Florida, had such a bad drop. So they decided to go with Coy Moore, who ironically also had an issue with drops. Also, Coy Moore is not a deep threat. He was the only receiver with, I believe, 20 or more catches that averaged less than 10 yards per catch on LSU's team. And JONTRE showed the ability to stretch the field in yesterday's spring game, which makes him very interesting. So maybe JONTRE is the right option as that slot receiver. We'll see how things play out moving forward. And yes, the drops are a concern, but It was him and Coy Moore and Trey Palmer who were the top 3 on the team in drop percentage, which is something, of course, we want to avoid. Now we got to get to Dwight McGLOTHERN, who had a phenomenal spring game. I mean phenomenal. Now, the question, will he actually get his opportunity to even start next season? It was because Eli Ricks didn't play that Dwight McGLOTHERN got to start opposite Derek Stingley, who also had a fantastic spring game. Outside of Kayshon Boutte, who beat both of them for deep passes, it's Kayshon's the best offensive player on the team. That looked like a pretty dominant corner duo. Maybe you put Eli Ricks in the slot to get you guys not too pumped, but I am going to be doing an Eli Ricks film study that explores that question. Putting him at the slot corner position maybe is the best option moving forward. Or will it be Ricks, Stingley, and Kardell Thomas in the slot with Jay Ward and Todd Harris at safety? Jordan Tolles looked decent. It wasn't the best, it wasn't the worst, but he looked decent out there with Jay Ward as starting safety. So still a lot to be uncovered with that secondary. Now, Dwight McGLOTHERN only really played in 2 games last season, against Florida and against Ole Miss. Pretty good, all things considered, against Florida. I thought he needed a little more safety help. I thought his safety play over the top wasn't the absolute best with Mo Hampton, but overall, I thought Dwight was fine against Florida. The long touchdown he gave up, I thought was offensive pass interference. Against Ole Miss, it was also a little spotty, but that's true freshman cornerback play. Not everybody is Eli Ricks. So, the guy looked impressive. Now, giving up the deep pass, it does have to get fixed. And what makes it interesting is that he was not fooled on the fake spike. Okay, so the fake spike Myles Brennan throw, it wasn't the fake spike that got him. It was Kayshon making a better play on the flight of the football. Dwight McGLOTHERN, that's something that could be fixed. He was right there. So he showed high football IQ. This was a performance in the right direction for him. And the sky's the limit. I mean, he is a huge cornerback. So we'll see what happens moving forward. But, it's going to be hard keeping number 2 off the field. So, yeah, it's these spring games are so tough to evaluate. They really are. So is there something we can do to fix that? And the answer to that question is absolutely. We in our spring game preview, we talked about it. We'll spend a little bit of time on it now. Mike Gundy suggested bringing up a spring game, like an actual scrimmage, which would be better for everyone involved. Who wouldn't be excited about that? I've brought this up 1,000 times on live streams, but I'll bring it up again now. College football at the Division I level is the only sport where there is no off-season 7-on-7. There's no off-season scrimmages. Even in the NFL. Now, I doubt they ever go back to this, but even in the NFL, they would have intra-squad scrimmages. So, or intra-squad practices where one team would practice an entire week with another NFL team, like the Texans and the Saints did that forever. So, it's strange that in college football, where the actual regular season games matter the most, we don't have any warm-ups. The only way you can evaluate your players is going up against your own guys, which is not what actual games are like. And that's something I really hate about the spring game. Not only is it a scrimmage where quarterbacks can't get hit, and not only is it a scrimmage where you can't blitz, which is not like actual football at all, especially now with spread offenses. It's also weird that you scrimmage so much in the offseason that this was actually LSU's 4th or 5th time that they scrimmaged against each other in a month's period, which is not like football at all. You never play a team who, by the way, kind of sort of knows what your plays are going to be. It's never like that. It's actually something that could set your team back having a game such as this one. So I hate the spring game. I really do. I think at some point it is good to actually hit your quarterbacks in the offseason just so they can get used to it. Now, on top of that, there were no blitzes. And especially if you run 5 wide receiver sets, which LSU did a lot of in the spring game, you notice in 5 wide receiver sets, and there are some defenses that rush 3 and drop 8 a majority of the time, most notably Arkansas's Barry Odom defense last season. But, even going back to 2019, most defenses like to crowd the line of scrimmage and make the offensive line guess where the blitzes are coming from, if it comes at all. And LSU simply could not block that in 2020. We did 100 film studies on that very thing, and here's the thing. In 2019, they weren't all that great at blocking it either, most notably against Clemson and Alabama, but because Joe Burrow was, the greatest quarterback of all time, it didn't matter because that dude is a wizard. So, look, it's, me as an LSU fan, as excited as I was to see our dear beloved Tigers in Tiger Stadium, and all those things are great, it's tough to really draw too much away from this spring game. This needs to be fixed. And I'm not going to spend too much time on it because a lot of you don't care. I'm just being honest. A lot of you just don't care about the spring game at all. But this is something that is so easily fixable. Who wouldn't want to have an off-season scrimmage where LSU and Oklahoma State or LSU and Oregon and have a home and home? And it makes too much sense. But, what do I know? What do I know? I don't know anything. And I want 1,000 people watching our spring game analysis next Sunday night, the second half film study. You can watch the first half, link down below. It is Power Hour LSU. Boom! Ooh, I had some good, and I mean good, I'll say elite crawfish in Monroe yesterday. It was elite, I'm telling you.